Well, good evening, everybody. 4 p.m. Central Time, wherever you are in the nation. This is Market Monday. We are here every single Monday at the same time, whatever platform you might be joining us on, Facebook, YouTube, anywhere in between. Welcome. Welcome back for those of you who join us every single week. This is the Market Monday special edition today, as we did a pre-election night. Tonight, we're going to focus in. We're going to do a post election night since last Tuesday, right? We were on last Monday, just before the election. Well, since Tuesday, I could say there's certainly a lot to talk about. There's certainly a lot that has happened. We are going to focus in on a few key things in particular. What is going on in the stock market? Massive week in the stock market. Why? What happened? What is going on? And where do we at Tradeway feel like we are going from here? You're catching me. I see how big these guitars are on the in the background here. You're catching me in the studio. Definitely a lot of questions to be asked. And on that note, as always, those of you joining us tonight, if you have any questions, something you would like to say, comment, chat, go ahead, pop it right there in the comments. Tom Curley, Jeffrey Venable, always here. Jeffrey, I've gotten used to you just letting me know what is going on in Colorado Springs. Howdy from a cold, dark, and snowy Colorado Springs. Getting a lot colder out here in California. I feel like Tuesday happened and then everything changed, including the weather. So the conditions, man, they are shifting. I'll tell you what, we're going to look at the chart tonight of the S&P. What is happening in the S&P? Why? Why is it happening? Definitely some very violent and interesting movement in the S&P 500 index this week. Also today, saw some stocks, some very popular stocks, really selling off quite deeply. So why did that happen? What are some things you might need to know as you're looking at stocks out there? Conditions are potentially, they certainly are today, but for the shorter term, maybe the medium term, the market is changing. We'll see what happens from here and some of the things we need to know about that as well. What are the things that are still creating uncertainty that we could be watching for? The market is moving up, but is this a time for me to say, all right, I'm going to get back in there. I'm going to start buying stocks. I'm going to start actively trading again. Remember, here at Tradeway, we are teaching you, as we like to say, to fly your own financial plane. We don't tell all of our students, we don't tell any of our students, go buy this, go buy that, go sell this. No, we equip you to have the mindset and the skill set that is necessary for you to be able to navigate the financial waters. And of course, we are with you all along the way. That's what Tradeway is all about. So what are some of those things that you need to know? We could spend a lot of time tonight, no doubt, Valerie, I see you there. No doubt talking specifically about the political climate. Now, I have some things I want to say about this, but again, we could spend a lot of time. No doubt in my life, one of the things I know where I'm at with the whole situation, everything that is happening, information is important, but there's an information overload. Who do you trust and what do you listen to? Well, for me, getting away from the news, getting away from all the influences, and allowing the Spirit of the Lord to speak to my soul, the most important thing that I can do is just that. So I've even said very candidly to some of our students in our programs, especially last week, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to look at the chart. I'm not even paying attention to the news. Now, you've heard me talk about this on here before. I said to Jeffrey Nance, one of our other coaches, I think I held on longer than a lot of people. It's not that I had ultimate faith in the news media, but I had some. And the unbelievable bias that I saw, I expect people, they do this. I do this. You see things a certain way. You see them through a certain lens. That's why we come up with the conclusions, the convictions, and the beliefs that we have. I don't believe truth is relative, but I know that we all see through a lens. So I expect different sources to have a lens. But the utter disdain and bias, not just for the president, but for a conservative perspective, and that which many millions of conservatives find to be important, not just a reason to oppose or cause trouble. Now, by the way, I don't see any rioting out in the streets today. Okay, I don't see conservatives gathering in the streets and flipping over cars and setting them on fire. But I do see a very large group of people that do not feel heard, do not feel represented. And I'm not saying that's the only group. And by the way, this isn't about minorities or not. The minority turnout for this president in this election was the highest minority turnout for Republicans since 1960. I told Democrat and liberal friends of mine that, whom I have great relationships with, by the way, and great conversations. And they said, can you send me that data? Could you send me where you got that article? And of course, I sent them liberal news outlets to quote that material because, of course, that's the only thing they would listen to, which is fine. But the bias is so bad. It's so bad. I've gone over the limit of my patience for it. So I have always said market tone is one of the most important things that a trader does to decide when am I supposed to trade, when am I not? When are the conditions good for me to trade, and when are they not? If you think of a car, a driver, and the road, the car is the trading system that we teach you to use at Tradeway. This is what our programs do. We also train the driver. There's an internal training that needs to occur to be successful and an external training, emotional and skill set. That's the car and the driver. But there's also the road conditions. Do you drive the same speed in all road conditions? No. In fact, some conditions you don't drive at all. Some conditions, they are more ideal for driving. So you can stretch the legs of that sports car. You could take those turns faster, etc., right? There are differing speed limits depending on where you are. All of those things in this metaphor apply to trading. The road conditions is what we call market tone. And we learn to read market tone. Half of market tone is the chart. Half of market tone is the news. Now, I've always said that I consider the chart to be more heavily weighted and more impactful than the news most, not all, most of the time. Right now, I'm paying much less attention to the news. Much less attention to the news. Steve Perry says, I like your guitars. I like that you like those guitars. That's awesome, Steve. So that said, I'm not diving into a bunch of news tonight. But I am giving my thoughts. And this, I believe this is how the vast, if not the entirety, vast majority, if not the entirety of those of us at Tradeway who are actively trading, this is how we feel about the news. So without just making it a personal opinion, I'm telling you that news has always been suspect in being too heavily weighted when we're making trading decisions. Well, right now, it's even crazier, okay? And I don't think I need to go on and on about the bias that I see out there. It's so unbelievably bad. And of course, we were all kind of waiting. We were kind of waiting to see, does COVID just begin to disappear? You see the guitars here. I am a musician. That's part of what I do. And of course, we're all wondering, when are we going to be able to go and play live, right? When are we going to be able to get out into play venues where we play live music? And I'm already seeing articles posted favoring, we're probably not that far off. We're probably not that far off. We're getting closer. Studies show, that's what they like to say. Studies show that, we're not actually seeing COVID spikes from people gathering in certain areas and doing certain things. Oh, really? Well, that's convenient because just a short time ago, they said maybe not until 2022. And of course, there are thousands and thousands gathering in the streets to celebrate the projected Biden victory. And I don't blame them for celebrating. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about double standard all the way. And how many, many millions of Americans who voted, elections come and elections go. However this turns out, somebody wins, somebody loses. That's how it works. That's just how it works. Somebody likes it and somebody doesn't. But not feeling like you're given a fair shake on any level prior to last Tuesday is a very effective way to make people that you would like to accept the results have a hard time accepting them. Because we've been ignored, misrepresented, or not even represented in media almost exclusively, entirely. So that said, the election, I'll say this and move on, because this is what I want you to think about. And the likelihood is that most of you already are. But as we look forward with the market, now everything I said about news, what am I at least keeping on the dashboard for me when it comes to news? This doesn't mean I'm going out and searching all the headlines every day, because they're just telling me what they want to hear. I don't really believe in information so much as I believe in activism, right? I'm looking for information and I'm getting activism. And when somebody believes passionately enough about their perspective, they have permission. They give themselves permission. Organizations are giving themselves permission to behave in what is more aptly called activism than journalism. Now, if they were honest about that, then that would be fine. But to say that they're journalism and operate out of activism, that's where I have the issue. That said, I'm keeping these on the dashboard. Where are we really at? Well, we have a projected winner. And Wall Street is favoring a Joe Biden presidency at this point. We can see that, not because of my opinion. Look at the stock market since last Tuesday, right? They don't buy stocks when there's not confidence. They have confidence in what? Growth, predictability. Well, we're going to look at the market, but it's moving up. It's moving up fast, and it's moving up quite far. They're favoring that, but it is a projected win. It's not an actual win. Now, the fact that there are lawsuits and court cases and some things I'll get into in a minute, that is relevant. But even normally, even in an election previous years, 2016, it takes some time for the states to actually ratify these decisions. So we're not, news organizations will project the winner, and that's what happens. It takes time. There are automatic recounts happening. These are within extremely small margins, 0.6. I think there may be less even in some cases. So it's actually normal process to have recounts. Some are saying these recounts will be huge. Some are saying they're not going to make any difference at all. Doesn't matter. They're in recount. So we need to keep in mind that there are some of these things in operation in the background. Furthermore, I mentioned lawsuits. I mentioned some of this. There is, and this is from both sides when it comes to media outlets. We've seen an actual county that Biden won flip over to Trump based on software. So we really need to see these legal proceedings play out. There's talk that it'll go to the Supreme Court eventually. Will it go to the Supreme Court? I don't know. It could. We've seen that in 2000. It's a different situation than 2000, of course, 20 years ago. Interestingly enough, a lot of the Supreme Court justices, I think there's 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken, that are now on the bench that were part of the legal team for, at that point, presidential candidate Bush in 2000. So there's a lot of balls in the air and some very, very interesting pieces. We need to see that play out. If your candidate is Joe Biden, obviously you don't want to see any pieces move. If you're hoping for a Trump presidency, you want to see those pieces move. We need to see this play out. I think there's risk on that level. If we really actually start to see some things materialize in terms of we're really going to see some counties or some states impacted in their decisions, some ballots being seen as they're not going to be counted, they shouldn't be counted, all that kind of conversation. And that's as far down that road as I'll go tonight. But I will say those are important conversations that I don't necessarily expect to see mainstream media talk about at all, especially if there's any validity in them. I don't believe they're interested in that in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to be too cynical about it, but I already told you, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. So let me go ahead and share. Yes, Melody, I see your comment there. So ultimately, yes, I find the bias so bad on every news source on TV, regardless of liberal, conservative, left, right. Totally. I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that. And no matter where you are on the spectrum, I would even like to say that, and I've posted this on social media before, I would like to see everybody have a conversation about how is everybody else experiencing that. Now, Melody also commented, listen, you're sharing your own bias now as you complain about others doing it. I am definitely being honest about where I'm at and have been, and so are all of us at Tradeway. No question. I mean, this is just part of who we are. So I think when there's an expectation that you're going to get a perspective, this isn't a news outlet, right? This is our perspective on the market. Now, I do believe that this is the kinds of things that you need to keep in mind as we move forward in terms of news risk when you're looking at the market. And I did mention we're going to look at the S&P, which we're going to do. So when there's clarity on what you're going to get, that's one thing. Because you're absolutely right. And I said this at the top of the hour. Everybody sees through a lens. Everybody has a bias, and everybody has something that they think is important to see happen. Right? This is what I would like to see happen, or this is what I'd like to see considered. And I may or may not feel that that which is in positions of power or influence are appropriately paying attention to those things. And sometimes you may feel that they are, and other times you may feel that they aren't. That is true. That is a human experience. But it doesn't invalidate how important it is to say and discuss that in that perspective and in that personal experience, there are some major things, and they are not being focused on. They're not being given what I would say a fair shake. And it's absolutely perfectly obvious that a lot of people disagree with that. I mean, that is just where we're at. That's just the state of things. So there's no doubt that things are being paid attention to and other things are being ignored. So let's jump over to the S&P. I think it's really important that we recognize just pulling up this chart here for you guys. I think it's really important that we recognize that not everybody on here is going to agree. Not everybody is going to accept the same things. And that is ultimately, I think that's just the microcosm of where we're at. But this is certainly how we feel about what is happening right now. No question. share. Sorry, guys. Let me see if we can fix this screen share here. All righty. Can you guys hear me? Let me know if you can hear me out there. Just looking for somebody to drop a comment for me. I understand you didn't have audio there for a minute. Okay, good. Brian can hear me. Sorry about that, guys. So, Jeffrey, if you could just let me know where we left off there, I'll pick right up on that. Good. I see Dave. I see your comment there. Brian, I see your comment. Ileana, good. Sometimes when I'm in the screen share, it doesn't necessarily tell me where you guys are at. I'm not sure why it's saying this max devices, because I'm only on this device. So as I just wait for a comment there on where we left off, going to the chart. Okay, so sounds like we missed a lot of it. So a couple things. I mentioned that news and chart make market tone, okay? So what really happened here? Okay, what really happened here? Well, we moved before the election, we moved into what? We moved into an area of support. Support is where stocks like to bounce up. Resistance is where stocks like to bounce down. We hit down here. Now, this didn't just come out of nowhere. Yes, there was an election. And we're talking about why would the market favor a Biden presidency, at least in the short term, because that's what we're seeing on the chart here. Well, keep in mind, we were right down in this support area here. We retested that. And we moved up from there, okay? So that was a place that we weren't necessarily surprised to see some price action. That's what happened there last time. Now, it went much faster this time than it did last time, or even back here, right? So this is definitely not a complete surprise, although we would have had to be pretty risky to take any kind of trades in there, which most of us were not. Right? We didn't know that was going to happen like that. And with it being in this area and the risk of an election going one way or the other, it could have dropped down to here. It could have tanked. So we saw this happen. And they, in case this didn't come through before, this is really about potentially, and I've read some articles from some money managers on Wall Street, some opinions of what they're feeling, why they're buying. You know, there's an expectation, again, at least in the short term, for a certain level of predictability, right? Not disruption, right? Not a tweet that comes out and tips the market one way or the other. Some of that kind of stuff off the table. More predictable, less volatility. And in that, it's like, okay, that's what we want. Plus, more stimulus. We want lots more stimulus. So if we believe that the candidate is going to pour that into the market, hey, we got another election in 4 years. Let's just keep that going. And for that, in the short term, hey, let's buy stocks. And then again, today we got the COVID news on the vaccine, like 80, 90% effective in its trial. It comes out and bam, up it goes. So that said, what happened here? Don't be surprised. This is big, okay? I'm just going to check back in here, make sure. So the audio is cutting out as soon as I go to the chart. That's what I'm understanding. Oh, I understand. I understand what you're saying, Ileana. Yes. Okay. No problem. Just making sure we can still hear. For some reason, it's making me do this every time. All right. So what happened here? Well, I want to say this. I'll say it quick. Keep in mind that if you ever see the market, any stock you're in, zoom up. And we're going to look at some specific stocks here in a second. If you see it zoom up, Don't be surprised if you have a red candlestick at the end of the day. Why? Because traders get what? Profit. Profit when we see big moves like this. And this was a big move. It was also a move past the all-time highs. Here's the all-time high right here. Okay. We got significantly higher than that. So no surprise to see Wall Street saying, all right, let's take some profits here. And then they did so. Didn't go down too far. We're still way up there, but they did sell off. That's why as traders, we don't want to chase price. We want to get in at the right time. We want to get in near support, not just because the market is up, not just because the stock is up. Because what do? We can chase. We end up entering the stock here, and then it sells off the rest of the day. And we're stuck, as they say, holding the bag. So we don't want to do that. Also, look at these old lines I have on here. I've had these, and our students that are on the broadcast right now, I recognize some of the names. You know, we've had these lines for months and months and months. Well, we kept them on here for a reason. Look what happened today. There was no horizontal line here for resistance because the price has never been there before. This is as high as it's ever been right here. So what happened? We hit that old support line, and that was enough to bring the profit taking in, right? There wasn't just out of nowhere. There's a reason why they said, okay, now's the time. Now's the time. So they came in. Now, we didn't necessarily know they were going to do it at that level, but there's no surprise. And when you leave these lines on the chart, then you can anticipate, hey, I don't know if they're going to sell off at that level, but I'm going to make sure I'm prepared because they might. Because old support often can become new resistance. And we saw that. What's one other thing that we saw today? Well, I think this is really interesting and really important for us to keep in mind as well as the market went down. What happened here? Well, primarily today, just speaking of today, we had the news on COVID vaccine, right? So they saw this jump up, and this meant that potentially we could see what? The economy open, things normalize somewhat. Why? Because we have a vaccine that's looking promising. If the economy is able to reopen, meaning businesses, all these restrictions, things like that, start to lift, then we could expect more growth. And people wouldn't be so dependent on some of the technical things that they've been using. Good example, Zoom. We're using Zoom all the time at Tradeway. Okay? If we don't need to do as much Zoom, are these evaluations on a company like Zoom, are they even relevant anymore? So a lot of questions came in today from students saying, why are these really great tech stocks getting crushed? Well, think about it. If we don't need Zoom as much, Zoom as a company is not going to grow in subscribers, subscriptions, memberships. It's going to make less money. We don't want to buy the stock. Boom, down it goes. Here's another example. A lot of people watching a lot of Netflix this year. Now, they were already watching a lot of Netflix, but it's been significant. And there's been, a little bit of a move here, but boom, today it gets crushed. Same thing. Here's something a little different even. Costco, not a tech company. Look what happened to Costco. A lot of people going to Costco. They're making a lot of money, been stocking up. Hey, let's not make 10 trips to the grocery store. Let's get out to Costco. Let's do it all in one run. If we weren't already somebody who was doing that, now we are. Lots of people were already doing it, but now even more people were doing it. Well, we're speculating, not so sure that that's going to have the kind of traffic and growth that it was. So we're taking profits. We're at all-time highs once again today. And people say, that's it, we're out. And they have a big day down, 5% down on the stock, a little bit after hours. So about 5.5% down on the stocks. Pretty big move down on the stock. Okay. So just because the market is up doesn't mean we jump in. Now, this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I think some people could write this down and be very, very helpful for you. Jeffrey, I see that perfect tag of that old support. Absolutely. We are teaching people how to be traders, right? To successfully trade in the stock market. There's many things that you have to do, but keep this in mind. Here's a simple one. We don't look for price movement. We're looking for price edge. I just showed you some examples of price movement. Stocks, the market itself has gapped up, right? It's hot. The buyers are there. It's been moving up all week, right? Last week. And today it falls and lots of stocks fell off. You don't want to get in when stocks are up. That's not enough. You want to get in when stocks are at support. We teach you in our programs how to identify price edge and how to control yourself so that you're only trading when price edge is present. If you can identify price edge, meaning there's a higher probability of what I want to happen in this scenario than in that scenario. So I'm going to choose the right one. There's a higher probability of what I want to happen. That is edge. If we just look for price movement, we're all over the place. We're all over the place. And that's how we take losses, get frustrated. That's not trading. That's guessing, gambling, and going for it. And Jeffrey and Tom out there know I say trading is never guessing, gambling, or going for it. It's always identifying edge and restricting your actions in the stock market to just that. So, market is really hot. If we can pull back to old resistance, hold, and move up from there, then we may have some opportunities. I mentioned we've got to look and see where does some of this other election stuff play out. I won't be surprised if in the short term, honestly, any sort of legal action and all this kind of stuff, I don't necessarily see Wall Street even paying too much attention to that. I don't see media paying too much attention to that, at least by and large, most media outlets, so as to not even try to give it any sense of legitimacy. So I don't necessarily see that coming up in the short term. We will see if that happens. Tom says this is about discipline, and it is. It is about discipline. It is about discipline. Tom also mentioned that our governor of Colorado just threatened more lockdowns if numbers do not stop increasing. Now, we don't have a widespread distribution on a vaccine yet. So in the short term, even though what I'm saying has caused the market to jump, that doesn't necessarily mean if, as Tom points out, numbers increase in areas of the country, we don't see some pullback. So there still remains major question marks on that, which is why even though we see big price movement, we're looking for the right time to get into it, into the market. And we also teach our students, hey, listen, if you're going to trade right now, here are some things you can do that allow you to get some market exposure, but to take significantly less risk than you might normally, because these are not normal times. People in the program know that I like to say, what I actually don't like to say is the market is hard, right? I ask my students not to say that to themselves. Man, the market's hard right now. Man, the market's just so hard. It doesn't help us to say the market is hard. The market just is what it is. We just need to learn to control ourselves, manage risk, and trade when we should be trading. That's what this program is all about. So that said, thank you guys for being on here. This is the post-election analysis. And, we just need to wait and see what happens here. All right. There's no telling where we're going to go from here. Anything can happen. Anything can happen at this point. The chart will continue to speak to us. And, just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, it can speak to us no matter who we are, no matter what we're thinking today, no matter who we want the president to be today. I think there's freedom for all of us to just be able to say where we're at and give other people a platform to say where they're at. That's fine by me. That's totally fine by me. And we're honest about that platform on here. And it is relevant for two reasons. One, this does affect the market, right? This is the major news item of the day. Interestingly, how COVID kind of squeaked back in there today with the vaccine. But it also is just part of who we are. It's part of who we are. And ultimately, it is the answer for long-term growth, sustained long-term economic growth. I've said it on here before. It was said at the debate, and I'll close with this. I heard one candidate say we're in for a long winter. I heard the other candidate say we're not in for a long winter because we're going to be successful. Everybody stands to benefit from that. Putting your bills on a credit card is not a good idea. And that's how I happen to see one form of leadership in this country presenting an economic future. And I don't think that that is helpful. So it is about the market. It is about so much more, but they are not separate. That said, thank you guys for being on. We will be back on Wednesday. And next week, back to our interview series. Lots of great feedback from you guys on the interview series. We'll continue to speak to the Tradeway coaches and some of the team members over here to give you some insight, hopefully some answers. How did they begin this journey? Why did they begin this journey? And how have they been able to move forward and occupy the space that they do in the journey of becoming a trader? It's a practical platform. It answers a lot of questions. So I hope to see you guys there. We'll be back on that next Monday. Linda, I see you there. Thank you as well. And of course, we'll be here on Wednesday with our regular Wisdom Wednesday. And I will see you guys then. Thanks so much. Good night.